Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we're talking about these guys or gals. I don't judge, or whatever they like to be. I don't judge, right? But these three cards right here: Dupe Frog, Swap Frog, Rodent Toad. They have another one too. They have another buddy that kind of got power crept out. They have another buddy that's on the ban list. A couple of buddies that are on the ban list actually. And my question is, when it comes down to these three cards here, is are they bad enough at this point, consistently bad enough at this point, to where they do start to merit being banned or being limited? And here's what I mean. Okay, one of the best decks of the older era of like Ghost format was Monarch Frog. So what you do is you use Swap Frog or Dupe Frog. You could use Dupe Frog, Rodent Totem, and Treeborn Frog. That's how old these cards are. Like these cards are like over 10 years old. And you would use those. You use Treeborn Frog, summon itself out if you didn't have any spells or traps. And usually Monarchs didn't do that because they weren't like Floodgate Monarchs like they are now. You'd use Swap Frog to get a free special summon, and to dump Rodent Totem to get another free special summon. Summon like Darkness Dragon, summon Caius the Mega Monarch, summon Ryza, what have you, right? Then obviously one of the most oppressive decks of all time, at least during its format, was Frog FTK. And Frog FTK with Mass Driver, with Subzitoad, was absolutely insane. And a lot of times when we think back of Frog FTK, we think Subzitoad, we think Mass Driver, those are the problems, right? But if I'm remembering correctly, Mass Driver was banned, and the deck was still really good because it was Frog Synchro. Because you can make cards like Brionac, Trishula, and you could get a lot of value out of that, right? It took a while for this deck, for these cards, to kind of come back, but they were always just floating around, no pun intended, um, in water decks, right? There was the Atlantean Mermail deck when the Prince came out. I forget the name of the Prince already, but when that card came out, the Frog engine would sometimes get splashed into it, especially after another Frog came out, Totally Awesome, right? When Totally Awesome came out, now you could run the Frog engine. You can trigger Marksman. You can trigger Heavy Infantry. You can trigger the Atlantean Prince. You can trigger Dragoon, get a search off Dragoons, and you can do all of that by pitching them off a Swap Frog. Then, a few years later, Paleozoics came out, and Paleozoics were coincidentally all level 2 Aqua monsters. And I don't want to, I don't know if you love Paleozoics. I don't want to take anything away from Paleozoics, but it was an interesting situation that, like, in Invasion Vengeance, if I'm pretty sure that's when the best Paleozoic cards came out, like the Dynamiscus, the Book of Moon effect. I'm pretty sure they have a Book of Moon effect. I know they have a Shrink effect. All and their best Xyz monsters all came out when Totally Awesome came out, right? And so the Frog engine got splashed in here, and these are the only monsters usually that deck was running. Sometimes they'd run Absolute Jack or whatever that card is that mills 5, but they weren't even really running hand traps. They would just be running Swamp Frog and a bunch of traps. Swamp Frog, Dupe Frog, Rodent Toad. And obviously Totally Awesome has made this engine really good as well, but this is now, I mean, what are we at? Like 5 or 6 times where this engine has been put in the best deck of the format, right? And in my experience, usually engines like that get used and overused and used and overused. And I think the thing with the Frogs has always been this. Yes, they're really good because Swap Frog's a Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial's at 1. Swap Frog has 2 summons, right? It's a double summon, right? Swap Frog can... I mean, that's really all that it does. But then it also... Dupe Frog can't be... It has that annoying effect where you have to destroy Dupe Frog. Rodent Totem is not a hard once per turn. And none of these cards... I think Dupe Frog's search might be once per turn. Which, by the way, Dupe Frog search is Swap Frog, right? And, like... There's such insane value with these 3 cards here. And maybe it is because they're older cards. But really, it's just because... These cards have always been considered like almost like a necessary evil. Like they're at the very, very tippy top. Like there's very good cards like Lightning Storm, like Forbidden Droplets, or like Sword Soul Mo Yi, in my opinion, right? That are really, really good, but not necessarily speaking bannable. Like, there's Virtual World Searcher, Virtual World Lulu, I think is her name, or his name. Who, I don't care. Um, that card is really good, especially for Virtual World, but it's not so good that it's bannable. And I think that's what people view Swap Frog as. That's what they view Rodent Totem as. That's what they view Dupe Frog as. It's a really, really good engine, but it's not so good that it's bannable. However, once again, we're seeing this engine being supplemented in a powerful, potentially tier 1, tier 0 even strategy at Splight, right? Or is it Sprite? Anyway, point that I'm trying to make with all this, I think Konami, and I don't know if they're going to see this video. I don't know how everybody feels about this, but I think Konami does need to just look at the Frog engine and just say, what if they were all just at 2? That way you weren't always opening Swap Frog, right? What would Splight look like if all of these cards were banned? Would it still be a tier 1 strategy? Would it be a tier 2 strategy because it's missing this engine? Because at the end of the day, this engine, and maybe Totally Awesome is the only problem, right? And maybe if you got rid of Totally Awesome, now, you don't have that go-to Xyz that only these cards can make, right? And Paleozoic cards. There's other Aquas, of course, too. But at the end of the day, I just think that this package, other than Frog the Jam, is just absolutely insane. And I think it does need to get hit. If Splight comes out and is as good as advertised, and it's tier 1, and it's like taking over all the events, this engine needs to be looked at, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think the Frog engine needs to be hit? Let me know in those comments down below. Make sure you guys click that like button, show your support for the channel, subscribe for even more content. But most importantly of all, have a good day.